really excited to be here. My name is Mark Hargis. I'm with Youth First. We're a nonprofit based and headquartered in Owatonna. We've been a Playball Minnesota partner, I think, with the Twins for 8 years now, and just appreciate Josh having us. And I love coming to the coaches conference just because I love being at Target Field, 1. Number 2, love hanging around baseball. And 3, don't you just love the food? For lunch, you just can't beat, a ballpark buffet, right? So it's all good. So while we're waiting maybe for some of these other guys to come down, and I know you're probably kind of lunch is sitting in, everybody stand up. Where you're at, come on, stand up. Yeah, I know. I'm an old coach, so I'm okay with making everybody uncomfortable. Stand up. All right. So if you have been a coach, if you've been coaching baseball for less than 5 years, sit down. Awesome. So you guys are all the newbies, right? Under 5 years. So let's give them a hand. Great job. Thanks for being here. Just curious who we have. All right. If you've been coaching for 10 years or less, sit down. Wow. So we got some guys who've been here doing this a while, right? 10 years or less. All right. How about 20 or less? See, now we're in rarefied air, right? How long have you been coaching baseball?
Me?
Yep.
Since the 60s.
Since the 60s. I gotta do the math. That's so great. That's awesome. How about you?
36.
36 years. Awesome. 26.
25.
25. Awesome. Great job. Give these guys a hand. All right, we got the other session coming in. So I see Coach Andrews is over there. He's awesome at making sure they all get stuff. We make sure they get cards too. So while they're coming in, that's awesome. I appreciate you doing that. It's always curious just to see what the contrast is of experience of coaches. This spring, I'll start my 46th year coaching baseball. I know I don't look like I'm 100 years old, right? People are like, when did you start, when you were 13? Yes. 13 years old, that was my first paid coaching job. Coaching Little League Baseball in the little community in Northeast Iowa where I grew up. And my dad was a coach, and so I just loved it. Thought it was my dream job. 13 years old, you get paid to go to the park, ride your bike, go to the park, and coach, right? Just never quit doing it. So I just love it. Still love coaching other people's kids. And now currently coach middle school baseball in Owatonna. So again, thank you for coaching. For people that don't coach, they don't understand how much time and effort and commitment it really is. And the investment that you make in young people, like you heard Corey talk about this morning, and I'm not going to do the cry thing. Were you not all crying at that story? It was like, it took me back to Tom Hanks. It was like, there's no crying in baseball, right? It was awesome. But it's important. You're making an impact, right? So I think this is a great way to kind of put a wrap on it. We started out talking about why do we coach? And I want to go back to that just a little bit. When Josh was talking about coaches and umpires and coaches and parents, it kind of took me back to why do we coach, right? And I think it comes down to what's your perspective. I think that's what Corey was talking about. What's your perspective on youth sports? Why do you do this? Hopefully you thought about that this morning when he was talking, and you've kind of been able to carry that with you during the day today, and hopefully we'll carry it with you into the season as to why it is you're a coach and the impact that you have. I think as we start talking about parents, one of the things I want to talk about is the attributes of a youth coach, and John's going to help me over here a little bit. What are the attributes of a good youth coach? This is all you guys, right? Right? What are the attributes of a good youth coach? So, what do you think they are? What would you say an attribute is of a good youth coach? Shout them out.
Make the game fun.
Make the game fun. Patience.
Engage.
Be engaged. Energy. Motivation. Encouragement. That's a good encourager.
Keep busy.
Are you keeping up okay?
Close.
Okay. What was that one?
Keep them busy.
Keep them busy.
Care for the kids.
Caring about kids. Be positive. What else? Be disciplined. Be disciplined or teach discipline. Anybody else?
Respect for the game.
Respect for the game. Yeah. Respect.
Communicate.
Communication. I think we heard that one a couple times today. Any other ones? Pretty good list, right? How do we do, John? Pretty good? All right.
We filled her up.
Filled her up, so that's a great list. So now, let's talk about what are the attributes of a good umpire. First of all, maybe I should say, how many of you have umpired? Wow, look at this. That's awesome. Great job. For those of you that haven't, you should. At least once. Because those of you that had, it changes your perspective, right? Yeah, it really does. So some of you have umpired. So what are the attributes of a good umpire?
Good vision.
Good vision. Okay. What else?
Patience.
Patience.
They got to know the rules.
Know the rules.
Consistent.
Consistency.
Loud.
Loud. Would that kind of go with communication?
Diffuse tension. Diffuse tension.
Diffuse tension. Okay. What else?
Pace of game. Keep the pace of the game.
Keep the pace of the game. Okay.
Set expectations.
Setting expectations. Part of communicating too, yep.
They're hardworking about getting into position.
So hardworking or like hustle, I hear hustling a lot, which is good, yep. Any other ones? Teaching? Sure. Helping teach the game, yep, yep. Enjoyment? Having fun, enjoying the game, yep. Awesome. So I would venture to say, if you look at those lists, right, there's a lot of crossover there, isn't there? Right? If we think about it, coaches and umpires are there for the same reason, right? The goal is for all of the kids on both teams to have a great baseball experience. So all of these things on both sides lead to the same goal, the same purpose, is why we're there. We just play different roles to get there, right? Do we agree? Okay. So we have one of the cards that we handed out is we call our pocket reminder card, that little business card. And over the last 8 years, we've been creating what we call conduct first environments all across Minnesota in different sports. We've got great partnerships. The Twins have been just an awesome partner. We now have partnerships with Minnesota Youth Athletic Services. You're probably familiar with them if you played the Gopher State at all. We just finished. How many of you coach youth basketball at all? And did any of your teams play in the grade state tournaments recently with MYS? Then you saw our conduct program there for the first time. And we're partnered with Minnesota USA Softball for fast pitch softball across the state of Minnesota this year, as well as a number of leagues and other communities that we work with. But there's three sides to this conduct environment piece, and it all leads to the same thing we just talked about. First of all, remember it's about the kids, right? So when we're talking about working together with umpires, we want coaches and officials to become partners in the process. Remembering it's about the kids. That's why we're there, for the same purpose, right? To make sure they have a great experience. Secondly, we need to keep our competitive energies in check, right? In the moment, I think a lot of times we talk a good game, but once the game starts and we get into competition, or especially when you go to tournaments and there's like some hardware to win, or there's a state tournament label on it, it seems like our common sense goes a little bit out the window sometimes. So we have to keep our competitive energies in check. And then third, there's a line of respect that we need to reinstill in youth sports. Respect for the officials and respect for the opponents. Because without those two things, what do we not have? Games, right? And you all know we have a lack of officials, right? We all know that? It's almost an epidemic right now, right? I mean, you talk to any high school activities director and they'll tell you just how bad it is, or an umpire or official's decider. And it's not getting better. So the way we fix that is we need all of you to become partners this year in the process, helping us recruit, train, and not scare away new umpires. Okay? I remember a couple years ago, I was coaching 9th grade baseball in Owatonna. We had a game at Rochester Century, so we're the away team. It's top of 7, 2 outs. We're down a couple runs. Tying runs are on base. I've got my 3 or 4 hitter up at the plate. 2-strike count, right? Umpire rings him up, strike 3 on a ball that literally bounced at his feet. Okay? Of course, my hitter's like, right? I'm like, hey, go sit down, right? And I head from the third base dugout across to the first baseline because I'm going to the dugout where my team's at. I want to go talk to my team, right? Takes me right past home plate, which who's standing there still? The umpire, right? So I get closer and closer and closer, and his eyes get bigger and bigger and bigger. Why? Thinks I'm going to light him up, right? I just walk up and go, hey, thanks for working today, appreciate it. And off I went to the dugout. I thought he was going to pass out, right? Went over, talked to my guys. I said, hey, sit down. Listen, it's unfortunate, right? It happens. But one call did not change this, ended up costing us the game. We had plenty of opportunities during the game to change the score. So what did we learn next, right? That was the message to my kids, okay? So we need to instill this. How are we going to handle stuff like that? It's not about getting the call right. These gentlemen over here, we're going to talk to them in just a minute. They're all umpires in our association down in southern Minnesota, okay? It's not about getting all the calls right. Who in here is perfect? Anybody? We're not. They're not either, right? We all make mistakes. We're not going to get the calls all right. That's a given. How you respond when it happens is what matters. Because that's the lesson you just taught your kids and your parents. Make sense? Okay? Your example, your conduct is what really matters. And as experienced coaches, I know a lot of us were here over 10 years. If you're an experienced coach and you have an inexperienced umpire like Adam over here, you need to partner with them, make sure they're okay. Help them out. Yeah, if there's a rule that maybe is you got a question, well, maybe help. That's a teaching moment, right? And if you got somebody like John and Craig who are a little more experienced, okay, and a little more mature, and I got a young guy coaching and college kids coaching the team or whatever, same thing. As an experienced umpire, I need to help him. Okay, help him understand. We need to be partners in the process because the only thing that matters that day is that both those teams have a great baseball experience. That's what matters. So, I thought we'd have a little fun with what I call Ask an Umpire. Okay? And not like that. All right? Isn't that when you think about, coaches and umpires, isn't that the image that you kind of come up with right away? It's kind of that. I don't know what it is about that. But I thought I'd introduce you to some of the guys that I work with, and we just find out a little bit about them and how they got into umpiring and why they do it. And then maybe we could have just a little conversation together about that. So I'll start with John. So,
my name is John Dickerman, and I'm from Owatonna. And started off with I just love sports. I remember at 5 years old listening to Herb Carneal and Halsey Hall, doing Twins baseball, and I've loved baseball ever since. But as I went through high school, I was a better runner than I was baseball and football, so I ran cross country and track in high school and college, and still loved it. And coached 20 years plus, and taught high school for 20 years plus. and after I retired from teaching about 2 years ago, and I was sitting around baseball, just catching most of the baseball games for the high school youth, and Mark came up to me and said, "You're at all these baseball games, you want to get paid to be here? You want a job?" Right? And so I started up a couple of years ago, but my hesitation, honestly, was kind of what Mark's talking about, because I see what coaches do to umpires, and once he explained the program that he's running, I was curious about it, and we'll get into that. But yeah, I'm planning on doing it again next year or this year, right? So here you go.
Hey, I'm Craig Malika. I live in Waseca now, close to Watana, of course. I retired from Naval Reserve after 24 years. Had a lot of free weekends after that. I started umpiring a buddy of mine. Didn't have an umpire for a doubleheader, so I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a shot. And I think I actually met Mark a year later. And I worked primarily in Watana and surrounding area. Last year I did everything from U10 softball all the way through township baseball. And like Mark said, there's a huge umpire shortage. If you say yes, they keep saying yes. I probably did between softball and baseball all the way, including high school, probably 200 games last summer. It's unreal. So if anybody wants to give it a shot, you should.
I'm Adam Malika. I'm a junior from Waseca. I've been umpiring for about 4 years now, and just last year I started to get around the area rather than just in Waseca. My dad gave my number to some guy who coordinates umpires, and he got me a lot of tournaments over the summer. I had a good time at all of them.
So I'm gonna leave the mic for them. I'll try to use my middle school coaching voice here. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, have you had any situations or interactions with umpires where you have maybe you want to share it or have a question that we could talk with you about that kind of comes to mind, or a question you might have always wanted to ask an ump and didn't? I know you're not shy. Okay, I got a couple primers then. We'll start. How many of you usually have a one-man crew umpire? Okay. How hard is it as a one-person umpire to cover the whole field and see everything?
I would say it's especially hard. Now I'm seeing down to second base, trying to get out there and see around the pitcher, get the right call.
Yep. Greg?
Well, it's darn near impossible. Softball, of course, the field is smaller, and it's making it smaller does make it easier to get the angles as long as you're following and trailing the plate. You're supposed to be down first and third, but in baseball, it's almost twice the distance. It all comes down to priorities. If you're gonna have a play at home, play at second, you try to cover the most important play that you think is gonna happen. But in general, most of the coaches get that, and I've never really had any problem with that as far as complaints are too much.
There are certain situations that I just as soon not be in. I will say that. When you got like bases loaded and one out, and you got a pitcher from the stretch, and you got guys leading off, and you got somebody that's close to committing balks, and then ball in the dirt, somebody check swings, and you're thinking, okay, I gotta make sure that it'll fly. And you got about 8 checklist things going before the pitch is thrown. Now all of a sudden something happens that wasn't on your checklist. It's like, oh gosh, right? So you just there are times where you just literally you're like any of us, your brain checks out from overload at times once in a while. And but I've had good situations, fortunate situations too, where normally as long as you hustle, like you're saying, to get in position, it's okay. But you don't always have the best angle either. I mean, third base coach, sometimes you're gonna have a better angle at calling third than I do if I'm running and I have to call a play at second. We had one situation in a tournament where the wind was blowing 40 miles an hour, and they had construction going on at the school, and I literally could not see anything 5 feet either side of second base. Okay, so somebody's stealing, and I'm like, I don't know, show me the ball, right? I mean, ball beats you, you're out, you know, kind of that kind of thing. So, I mean, you do the best you can on it, obviously, but yeah, I mean, there's just a lot going on. It's much easier with a 2-man crew.
Okay. Does that make sense? Don't you agree? Most times, if the umpire is hustling, trying to get in position, it's pretty good, right? Does that help? That helps from a coaching perspective, right? Any questions yet, Corey?
I got a story, basically.
Come on.
Sorry for the guys who are in the earlier one. I know you guys are sick of me. You heard me for 2 hours. Real quick story about that umpire deal here. It was 12. We were 12 AAA playoffs, and I get this is kind of a dig me story, but please look beyond that because I'm sharing with this. I don't like sharing this story, but it kind of was a jaw-dropping experience I had with a young man. We're in the 11 AAA playoffs, and we're rolling. And there was a situation in which it was early in the game, and our base runner went outside of the baseline to be tagged. Their coach went nuts about the not call I call was a younger kid. And so I went out there, and because the coach was pretty angry about this, so I went out there and I told the ump, I'm like, hey coach, let's figure this out. Let's make the right call here, and because this for the quality of this game, this is a big game. Let's make the right call here. And I went to the ump and I said, hey brother, our guy was outside the baseline there. So the reality of it is he should have been out. And I get that you were behind. I said, hey coach, he was in a tough spot for him here. And so, so let's call this guy out and let's just move the game along. After the game, we ended up losing that game. Here's kind of the jaw-dropping aha moment I had. The kid came up to me and said, hey coach, that is the first time I've ever seen a coach do that. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, that's the first time I've seen a coach come out and correct the call. And so that kind of blew me away because I guarantee in this room, we have a lot of high integrity people. We have a lot of high integrity people in this room. But how often do we allow an obvious call in which the ump was in the wrong position to make that call go away for the win? Think about the lesson we can teach our kids about this situation. Do you think that the USC mom who paid all that money, if somebody did that when she played youth sports, make that decision later on? My point being is that we have a lot of opportunities to make some impacts on that kid. And when that kid came up to me and said to me, that's the first time I've ever seen somebody do that in youth sports, blew me away. And I know in this room we have a lot of high integrity people. So the hope for me sharing that is that, especially when there's a one-man crew, we can help them get the calls right, because at the end of the day, it's about getting the calls right and helping them do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Awesome. Great point. Anybody else got a question that popped up? Yes, sir.
You find yourself in a situation with an irate coach over a big call. How do you deal with that, knowing that you did make a big call? How do you help them rectify the situation?
I go by, this comes from teaching, but rules without a relationship lead to rebellion, right? So even at the beginning of the game, I'll try to talk to a coach, just kind of shoot the breeze a little bit, get to know him, so we have somewhat of a relationship going on, because that always helps. Because otherwise it's easier to just rebel towards the rule instead of just realizing that there's a person you're dealing with. And like Mark said, I screw up. I mean, a lot of you might sit in the bathroom reading Reader's Digest, pretty much all summer long, I'm sitting in the bathroom reading rules, right? Trying to remember all the doggone things. And but when you deal with an irate coach, one of the things that helps, I found huge, is at the beginning of a game when we have our meeting at home plate, I'll go through the 3 things on that card. That it's about the kids, curb your competitiveness, and respect the adults or the officials and the other team. And I've had situations where, I've coached myself too, so like you call a check swing and you blow it, or there's a bad call, you make it first or something like that. And the first instinct a lot of times could be for a first base coach to go, man, that was a horrible, and it's like, I might have missed it, right? Okay, so you do think that. I don't mind that, but if a person continues to ride me after that, there was one game last year, and I haven't had many, but one game last year where I tell the coaches this at the beginning of the game, if they're your parents, they're your coaches, and they're your players, they're your responsibility, not mine. I'm here to ump, and if I don't like it, I'm retired, I'll go home. Right? Go ahead and good luck play. I don't say that, but I'm somewhat thinking it sometimes. But in a situation where a guy was riding me, I just called timeout, walked down to the third base coaching box where the guy was the head coach, and I said, basically, here's your card, right? Give that to your first base coach because he's riding my hind end right now, and explain it to him that this is what it's about. And if he rides me anymore, I'm ejecting him. And I've done that with, like one time with parents as well. But I find that talking through that stuff at the beginning of the game makes a huge difference. And the other thing is, as we were talking earlier, if you're in position, sometimes that makes a huge difference. And that's, I get it. If somebody's riding me, if I don't get behind the home plate, they got every right to jump on me. But if I'm getting my tail out there to, in position to make a call, who's to say they're right or wrong too? So I will say one thing. I don't know if anybody from Stillwater's here, but I had a team. This is a good thing. I had a call that was everybody gets 2 bases, right? And they were like coaches and they were parents. Everybody's going crazy that's not the call and all this. And it was based on guys that already advanced. Shortstop had the ball. He threw it. Deflected off the pitcher and rolled about as slow as it could roll, that about 1 foot into the dugout. Okay, so everybody was supposed to advance 2 bases, and they're going, "That's 1 + 1," and all. And it's just like there's no such thing as 1 + 1. Well, scared to death of it, or it made just kind of startled. But the next inning, the coach from the Stillwater team comes out with a rule book, right? And this is like the 5th inning. It's a tight game. It's like 8-7, and I'm going, oh gosh, now what? That blow a rule or something. He literally came out and goes, "You got that call right. Thanks." I could have hugged him, right? That's what we're talking about in terms of, irate coaches. A lot of times I'll talk them down, listen to them, try to understand, and sometimes I'll say, "I blew it." Okay. If it's a judgment call, I'm not going to change it. If it's a rule, obviously you can address that and make it right. But if they're sometimes people, you can tell. Sometimes people just want to complain because they're complainers, right? So if it's legit, I screw up. We all make mistakes. So.
Awesome. That's kind of like Corey was talking about, right? Getting the call right. That's what we're trying to do for the kids, right? Any other questions, quick? Yeah.
So, what kind of factors influence your strike zone?
What kind of factors influence your strike zone? I actually had this, I kind of phrased it up this way. Does your strike zone change based on the age and ability or size of the kids, or how have you dealt with that over the years, Craig? Great question.
No, that's a good question, and it depends. For me, it depends. It really shouldn't depend on anything. The strike zone is a strike zone. But if you're doing lower level baseball, even softball, my theory is if the kid can potentially reach the ball, I generally will call it a strike just to keep the game moving. It does nobody any good to have 20 walks in a row in the game. And it depends upon the level, and I got a story about that. I did U18 NAFA Nationals in chess did this last August. And I was doing the Minnesota A's, which is the highest rated club team in Minnesota. They beat, I can't remember who they played, but they turned around the other team, and the scorekeeper from the A's came out after the game. He said, "You missed that one strike in the bottom of the first inning that was outside." And I said to myself, if that's all you have to complain about, that's the best thing I've ever had in my life. But, so in general, try to keep the strike zone. It is what it is. High school, of course, we tend to keep calling closer strike zone. It's not easy though. I'll definitely say that.
I'll say some of that on. Can you hear me? Yeah.
There's a website called Umpire Bible that addresses that issue somewhat too. But I somewhat go by this for the most part, but they just say if you're like 12, you can kind of tell the quality of the pitcher too. But if you're 12, you call it above the letters. 13 is above middle, 14 is under the letters, this is bottom of the letters. And then they also just advocate like 12 to call inside pitches, like on the inside plate. But outside, call it to the chalk of the batter's box, which is kind of like to play a little bit. It gives them a little bit more room. So obviously, we all want to see baseball being played and not watched, including the batter. So it just kind of gets everybody in the game, and I mean, it just kind of helps. I just find it helps kids have fun. So that's kind of the general rule that I've tried the last couple of years. It seems to work out really well as far as being able to have a consistent strike zone that way. So
If you call it both directions, the coaches realize that pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you call it both directions, if you're given a strike, high strike to one team, you gotta give it to the other team. Same with that, just be consistent for both teams. People recognize that pretty close.
Very good though.
Okay.
Good answer. Yeah, one last one, Corey.
Based on that, how many guys, why do umpires say, when you meet different umpires, it's like, hey, this is my strike zone. And every umpire kind of has a different, like, are you guys trained? Like, when do you guys become umpires? What kind of training do you have?
So he's asking, does everybody have their own strike zone, or what kind of training do we get to decide what is a strike zone? Is that what you're asking,
Well, we
or?
all do, like, you go through the pregame meetings, the ump says, hey, this
Yeah.
is my strike zone. We're like, well, dude, isn't the strike zone in the book? You know, so well, I'm gonna call here and here.
Right.
So when these guys sign up to be umpires, do they have any training?
You know, I don't know that there is any real formal training, right? And even when you go to the high school league stuff, I mean, you look at the rule book, whatever the rule book says, defines it, but there isn't any formal, training that any of our guys have gone to. I don't think you've seen any of that, have you?
No, Minnesota State High School League.
Why don't you talk about that since you're a high school guy?
The Minnesota State High School League, you only have to go to the annual meeting every third year. And there's some good stuff in that meeting, but generally, you don't have any training on the strike zone. You read it in the book what it's supposed to be, but really, no general training.
I think that's why, Corey, most umpires probably say this is kind of where I like it to be. I know for the years that I've umpired, I've done that too. And just said based on the age of the kids, because I think to what, Craig and John are saying is it doesn't do any good to just sit there and have 20 walks or, in a row or whatever too. So I think most of those guys are trying to help kind of set that based on the age of the kids and the ability of the kids to try to just help everything come along and be consistent. That's what I found is the most important.
So these guys, they don't get any training.
Not in that respect, no.
Any training about how to deal with parents, how to deal with.
Well, yeah, and that's what I found is usually an association type thing. So, there's associations out there like we've done. We try to work and have mentors in. So young guys like Adam that come in are usually working with a mentor as they're learning to do that. And we emphasize those kind of things, how to work with coaches and deal with parents and those kind of things, and also the field mechanics and the rules. So generally we'll always have a mentoring approach and how that works with our young guys coming in. So that's really where it comes down to. Then it depends on who that mentor is and kind of how they teach it. But I think a lot of the formal training you're talking about is really done from the rules perspective, and there's not a lot of it, like there are in some sports. I know like hockey's super organized that way, right? Yeah. Yeah, another question.
Yeah, like in 15U, why won't the Minnesota high school, why won't they tell you their strike zone?
The high school league?
Yeah, they won't tell you. I asked them, what's your strike zone? It's for you to find out.
I don't know. That's a great question. So you asked an umpire that?
At the conference,
Oh, at the conference.
before the game, so what's your strike zone going to be? And so
Okay.
they won't say. A lot of them say, I'm going to tell you.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I guess if a coach asked me, I'd tell him kind of what I'm used to doing with you guys. And that's kind of I don't think that's very good communication, right? That would be an adversarial approach from a communication standpoint, saying if I'm gonna, right away we've created the wrong type of relationship, don't you think?
Well, do they have to tell you or not? Is that a rule? that they
Well,
have to
no, there's no rule. There's nothing in the rules that says that. I think we're now, we're off the charts a little bit as far as the rule book goes, because we're talking about relationships between coaches and umpires, right? And I think one of the things, getting back to the perspective piece, because we're going to move on to talk about parents a little bit, it's a similar conversation, I think, is why are we there, right? Getting back to why we're there. We got to remember this is about the kids on both teams, and what are we teaching them through how we do that? So that kind of a communication style, I don't think is helpful in teaching our players or our parents the right conduct either, right? So I guess if that was an umpire that I was working with, I would try to correct that and say, let's get on the same page with coaches before the game starts. Setting expectations, we heard, is one of the things that's important, and that you do that on the front end. If you're going to deal with it after the fact, it's a lot harder, right? Does that make sense? Anything else quick on umpires, or we're going to kind of move on? I just want to thank these guys for being willing to come up and share and be part of the process here. So thank you for what you do. See if I can get this back on here so we can move this through and wrap up for you. And as you heard, we need more umpires, right? So if you know people that are interested in being an umpire, ask them to do it. All right, we good now? Still okay? All right, so we're going to move on and talk about parents real quick. It's a similar conversation. How many of you, just for out of interest, how many of you are coaching your kids' team? Most, right? So when we get into coaching, I think that's probably the easiest entry point is we start coaching by coaching our kids' team, which totally makes sense. 9 years ago when we started our nonprofit, we started handing out a book called Real Winning. It was written by a CEO from the Twin Cities here, who wrote a book, John Shannon Jr. He was coaching his kids in a number of different sports and just decided to write a book about it called Real Winning, Teaching Life Lessons to Kids in Youth Sports. And I just love the way he writes and how he says things. So we started handing it out and went over really well. And so I love this quote at the beginning of his book. He says, it's about the kids. A winning coach becomes involved in coaching because he or she loves to watch kids play and grow. He or she measures the success of a season not by the number of games won, but by the number of kids won. Those who are learning lessons that will make them winners in life. So again, back to why we coach, what's the purpose, what's the focus. And I think one of the things we start talking about relationships with parents that I think we need to do as coaches is help our parents redefine what is winning, okay, or what is success, right? So I do a lot of parent meetings pre-season for a lot of different groups around the state right now, and I ask the parents all the time, what do you want your son or daughter to get from playing youth sports this year? And we throw out some examples. One of them might be scholarships, right? They think they're investing in their kid so that they're going to be able to go to college and play someday, right? And you can tell them the math is on the NCAA website. It hasn't changed for a long time. It's not going to. 5.4% of girls and 7.1% of boys, high school players in baseball and softball, are going to play in college. and probably not on a scholarship, okay? So we talk about that. We might talk about, is it status? Is it trophies and medals and titles and things like that? And I don't know how many of you, well, I can tell you what's going to happen. When my kids all grew up and got married, none of them took all the trophies and stuff with them that they had from youth sports. Zero. They were all in the garage in a box and ended up in the garbage. My wife and I sorted through them going, wow, this one's really cool. Maybe we should keep this one. Kind of looks neat, right? For memory's sake. Or maybe it's just about winning, right? We all want to be winners, right? So what is winning really? And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Inside Out Coaching, the book that Joe Ehrman wrote. Have you read it? Okay, if you haven't, I would highly encourage you to get that book and read it. It's a really great read. Touches on some of the things Corey was talking about this morning and why we coach. But what I love about what Joe says in his book is he defines competition. He says competition is not defined by winning or losing, but by the degree to which all competitors, that's the kids that play for you, realize their fullest potential. To the degree to which all competitors realize their fullest potential. That is the point of playing sports. I was talking to our high school activities director in Owatonna the other day, and Mark and I were talking, and we're pretty fortunate where we are. I mean, not a lot of our kids have really hard upbringings and those kind of things. And he said, you know, probably 95% of the kids in our high school in Owatonna experienced real adversity for the first time in sports. Which is that's a great thing, right? But that's the opportunity we have to help them understand how to face adversity, work through it, learn from it, all those kind of things, rather than having to figure it out when they're 25 somewhere away from home, right? So we have to get back to what is the purpose of sports. It's about competitors realizing their fullest potential. So those Twins player cards that we handed out, if you look on the back, underneath the baseball, it says, there's a little saying there, it says, become your best. That's kind of the way we put it. We put kids in, the reason we want them to play sports is so they learn how to become their best. Now that might mean someday they're playing in the major leagues. Might not. Whatever that is okay. If they learn to become their best through sports, however they're wired and gifted to be as a young adult, they're going to become. And they have a better chance of achieving that if we help them learn those lessons through sports. Our job as youth coaches, though, is not to figure out who the varsity players when they're fourth graders. That'll take care of itself. Let's keep them coming back every year until that happens, okay? And you heard this again today. It says surveys say 9 out of 10 kids say they play sports because it's fun, right? And fun can be a lot of things. A lot of them just want to play, and playing time is fun. But they want to be with their friends and be active and do all those kind of things. That's what sports is fun. I love playing sports, right? And yet the other surveys that we see across the country talk about 70% of kids in the United States quitting organized sports by age 13 because why? Why? It's not fun anymore, right? I love listening to some of the stuff Corey was talking about just making the game fun. Having games and practice. I forgot about playing 500. The middle school's going to do that this year because we used to do that all the time instead of playing video games, right? So have fun. And here's a news flash. If you didn't know that, fun equals playing time, right? I've managed as many as 22 or 23 kids at a time on a roster in 9th grade baseball, all right? And yet I have youth coaches that have 12 kids on their team say, how do you manage playing time? Okay, well, when I got 23 in at 9th grade, and I can only play 9 or 10, and I got to substitute, play high school rules, can't re-enter, all that kind of stuff, it's a lot harder, right, with that many kids, and yet we do it, and you're telling me you're having trouble with 12 kids, and you can re-enter all you want to do all that kind of stuff, right? Here's the only reason you struggle with that. You care about the score. If you don't care about the score, then playing time is just math. It's real simple. And I would love to take credit for figuring that out as a coach, but I had a guy by the name of Gordy Zimmerman who was my assistant coach when my kid was a 14U baseball player. He was my assistant coach, did our book, tracked everything. Third of the way through the season that year, a parent jumps me in the parking lot that night accusing me of playing my kid over hers. Playing time, right? One of the most probably the complaint you'll get the most from a parent, right? And they should. They all pay the same money, right? They should all play. Okay? Now, I would love to tell you that I could figure that out. I said, I really don't know. I don't think so. I'm sorry, I don't know, but I know who does. And I called Gordy. I said, hey, Gordy, can you do a report for us? Yes. Great. Gave me the report, gave it to her. She looked at the report and said, oh, I'm sorry. I said, great, we're good. Was it equal? No. Was it equitable? Yes. It was very, very fair. All kids were changing and playing and all this kind of stuff, right? Because I know that if a kid's always batting last in the order, if they're always coming in at the end of the game, if you're, all that kind of stuff, you've just handicapped them. They already know what you think of them, first of all. Kids are smart. They figure it out right away, right? Okay? And then if they never start a game, they'll never understand the flow of it and all that kind of stuff. And again, our goal at the youth level should be to get them to play the game, learn the game, have fun, be engaged, okay? Because you never know which one of those kids is going to stick and which ones aren't. I know I've done the math in Owatonna for over 10 years, and our varsity team, only 1/3 of those kids are on the top travel teams every year. 1/3. The rest of those kids in our high school varsity team come out of the middle somewhere. That's the math. Because those kids are at the top every year, they got options now, right? Everybody wants those athletes on their team, and everybody wants them to play all year round, blah, 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 right? Some of them move, some of them get hurt, some of them just aren't interested anymore. So that changes a lot. So again, it's not about those, it's about your whole team, okay? Couple more quick things and we'll wrap this up. Do you consider yourself to be a leader? How many of you consider yourself to be a leader? Okay, now I got news for you. If you're a coach, you are now a leader. So how many of you are leaders? Thank you. Yes, you are. Whether you want to be or not. If you're a coach, you are now a leader. You're in a position of leadership. Okay? The old saying that the hammer thing here, the manager says go, tells you to do something. A leader says, let's go. Right? Let's go together. Okay? I've read a lot of books and leadership material by a guy by the name of John Maxwell. You might have heard of him. He's probably the foremost expert in leadership in the country. And I love the saying he has, which is kind of the little image at the bottom, and you probably can't see through the podium over here, but he says, if you think you're a leader, look behind you. If nobody's following you, you're just out for a walk. Right? Coaches are leaders. You have to lead your parents, okay? You can't ignore them. They won't go away. Okay? And I know it's hard, because again, how many of you are coaching your kids' team? Most of you, right? So that means the parents in your team are your kids' friends, parents, right? See, it's easy for me to smile and look at my parents every spring and say, nobody's going to get a job or a college scholarship because we win a middle school baseball game. I don't care. And you shouldn't either. And I don't yell at umpires, and you're not going to either, or we're going to talk. Because I don't have a dog in the hunt. They can't accuse me of playing favorites. My kids are all gone, right? But you can kind of take that same approach and say, hey, it's okay. Remember, no scholarships are being handed out this year or any of those, so it's okay. Let's have fun, right? Let's make sure everybody has a good experience. But you have to lead and set that example, which is why our conduct program that we were just talking about earlier, this conduct environment piece is so important. Because people learn by watching you, okay? Your kids and your parents will learn more and respond more to your example than anything you tell them, okay? And I know in the peer group, it's really interesting, I get that. I know as my son-in-law is a physician at Gunderson Hospital in La Crosse, and he's got 3 boys and a girl. And little Carter's his second oldest son, and he's in 1st grade this year. So last year was kindergarten, was his first year at T-ball. Okay, so the La Crosse Park and Rec system, right? So we watched T-ball one summer last year, and it was really funny because all the parents are all, yelling and all this kind of stuff, and of course they can't process half of it anyway. But they'd hit the ball from the tee, and then the ball would go out, and there'd be like 18 kids in the field, right? And then it was what I called the school of fish. And so as soon as the ball's hit, the school of fish go like this. They're all trying to get the ball, right? And it took my little grandson Carter about 2 or 3 batters to figure out that he wasn't going to be the first one to the ball, so he didn't care anymore, right? And so he's looking for other stuff to do. So he and his buddy next to him were standing on the pitcher's mound. They figured out there's this rubber thing on the pitcher's mound, this rubber, and they started kind of kicking at it. Well, by the second inning, they had figured out, they thought they could get this thing out of the ground, right? So the couple fast kids were going to get the ball, and they're out there pulling it. Sure enough, about 2 innings later, they had this pitching rubber out of the ground, literally. And it was hilarious, and I was just sitting there cracking up. My wife's going, stop it. Because my son-in-law, Carter, he's trying to get him to engage, right? And it's like, dude, I was just cracking up because they didn't care. And he's out there having fun doing something, right? But again, how do we keep practices fun and all that fun stuff? So, how do we do that with our parents? You probably heard the adage that they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So this care piece, this is kind of how we're going to wrap up. Every kid on your team, every kid in your program has value, right? I hate to use that whole thing about they all paid the same money. Well, they did, okay? But you know what? We don't know what those kids are going through. We don't know who they're going to be or who they're going to become. But you've heard a lot today, especially this morning, about the influence that as a coach, as a leader, right, that you have on those kids, all right? So start with that foundation. Every kid has value. So C stands for communication. How many times have you heard that today? A lot, right? Communicate. I told you about Gordy Zimmerman, right? I heard Jason in the infield, he was talking about getting players to communicate, right? Communicate. If you don't set expectations with your parents, they're going to kind of go with the flow, right? Don't be afraid to do that up front. Doesn't mean you have to be mean about it. Just, hey, let's make this about the right things. A is for affirmation. On the wristband that you got. Hopefully you'll take that with you as a reminder. It says positive is contagious. It's hard for everybody to have fun if you're a grump. Right? If you're not fun to be around, kids aren't going to have fun. Right? Affirmation is about encouragement. You know, you catch more bees with honey than vinegar, right? Yeah? So be fun. Make it fun. Be fun. Be that person you want to be around. R is for recognize. Recognize people for helping out. I would get your parents on the field with you as many times as you possibly can. Get somebody to take the book to help manage whatever, equipment, whatever you can figure out to get them to do to help, get them out there to help. Because the more engaged they are in helping you, the less likely they are to sit back and complain about you. Right? Get them involved in the process. Don't just let them drop your kids off and make you the babysitter. Okay? A lot of times they'll help if you just ask them. Anybody can run a drill. They can. I mean, one of the most effective communicators about how to pitch was a mom on my U14 baseball team that same year I was talking about with Gordy. Senior kid moved in, her kid was a pitcher, and this lady knew more